Last year, the Dolphins went 9-8. They got rid of former head coach Brian Flores, and they're going to be replacing him with new head coach Mike McDaniel, who comes from the 49ers. He's going to be bringing over that West Coast offense. And if you're a Dolphins fan, you're asking yourself heading into this year, can the Dolphins finally break into the postseason? Because for the last 2 years, they have been on the outside looking in. And for Mike McDaniel, is he going to be able to help Tua take that next step up in development? Because last year, I felt like Tua got a lot of undeserved criticism. He had the worst offensive line in the NFL, little to no run game, and one of the worst wide receiving groups in the NFL as well. So the Dolphins this offseason, they improved the offensive line. You bring in left tackle Teron Armstead, who is one of the best left tackles in the NFL. You also sign offensive lineman Connor Williams, who either is going to be playing guard or center. And then you trade for Tyreek Hill, the fastest player in the NFL, and you pair him up with Jalen Waddle, who also happens to be one of the fastest players in the NFL as well. You also have Mike Gesicki, Cedric Wilson. So there are a lot of weapons for Tua to throw the football to in the passing game. On top of that, the run game definitely is going to be improved. You're going to have Chase Edmonds, Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert. Now, I don't know if they're going to have a lead back in this offense. They're probably going to rotate 2, maybe 3 guys into the run game, but you do have a lot of capable running backs who are more than able to give you good production on the ground. Now, the offensive line still is a concern because outside of Teron Armstead and Connor Williams, there's not really anybody on this offensive line at the moment on paper who really gives you a lot of confidence. Now, I think that Miami does have talent on the offensive line. It's just all about trying to find the right spots for these guys, such as Austin Jackson. Me personally, I think Austin Jackson would be better at guard versus him playing tackle, but most likely the Dolphins are probably going to give him a run at right tackle this year and then make some adjustments. Now, the defense, on paper, this is one of the most talented defenses in the NFL. You look at their defensive line. Christian Wilkins was a monster last year. Emmanuel Ogbah, Jalen Phillips, also a really good pass rusher. Jalen Phillips had a pretty solid rookie season. Emmanuel Ogbah probably is one of the more underrated pass rushers in the NFL. Linebacker Jerome Baker. The secondary really is what has me excited because you have Xavier Howard, Byron Jones, one of the best cornerback duos in the league at the moment. Javon Holland had a phenomenal rookie season. So for Miami, they have the talent to get into the playoffs. And honestly, if this team ends up living up to the talent that they have on paper, the best case scenario that I have for Miami is 11-6. Now, I was really close to going with 12-5, but I went with 11-6. This is a team that, although the wide receiving core and the weapons that they have when it comes to the skill position looks really good, you still have to take the fact that the offensive line outside of Connor Williams and Teron Armstead, you still have a good amount of concern there. But you have a really good defense, even though I'm not a big fan of them bringing back defensive coordinator Josh Boyer. However, I do like the fact that on offense, this is going to be an really good passing attack, because I think that putting Tua in a West Coast offense is the best scheme for his skill set. He has a better arm than what a lot of people give him credit for. He may not have one of the best arms in the NFL, such as a Justin Herbert or Josh Allen kind of arm, but he does have enough arm strength to be able to push the football downfield. Now, the West Coast offense is all predicated on the short and intermediate passing game, which is what Tua excels at. So that's why I think that Tua is going to end up popping off this year. And if the NFL had a most improved player award like the NBA does, I think Tua definitely would be my front runner for that award this year. Because when you look at the fact that you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, both wide receivers that not only are fast, but they're really good with the ball in their hands. If you just give them a little bit of space, they're a threat to take it to the house every single time they touch the football. Now, for the defense, if Josh Boyer ends up, proving me wrong, he ends up being a good defensive coordinator, then I think that the Dolphins defense should be top 10, maybe enter that top 7 territory. if the defensive coordinator is able to be as good as what a lot of Dolphins fans hope that he will be. Now, my worst case scenario for Miami is 6-11. Now, as I mentioned a couple moments earlier, I'm not a big fan of them deciding to bring back defensive coordinator Josh Boyer, simply for the fact that I don't really know how good of a defensive coordinator he is, because last year, there were some people that said that he was the guy who was calling the plays early on into the season when the defense was kind of struggling, and then Brian Flores took over the play calling, and that's when the defense improved. I really don't know what to believe, but I have a lot of skepticism about him as a defensive coordinator. So if he's able to come out and prove to us that he is a really good play caller on the defensive side of the ball, then I think that Miami definitely should be able to get to 11 wins. But I'm not really a big believer in him as a play caller. And it doesn't matter how much talent you have in the NFL, if you don't have good play calling or a coordinator or coach that's able to put the players in the proper situation to succeed, then you're not going to have a lot of success regardless of how talented your team may be on either side of the football. So I have reservations about him. And then also, since this is the worst case scenario, this is pretty much if everything was to go wrong, the offensive line improves, but you still have a lot of weaknesses that still end up hindering the overall performance of the line, such as, you still have questions at guard. Austin Jackson still is a developmental project at the right tackle position. So maybe those guys don't come along in development. Maybe the offensive line continues to struggle, and then that affects, how effective they can be in the run game and in the passing game when it comes to giving to a time to throw the football downfield. So worst case scenario for the Miami Dolphins, I have them at 6-11. Now, my overall record prediction for Miami this year is 8-9. I still think that New England and Buffalo are still better than the Miami Dolphins when it comes to the talent that they have on the interior of the offensive line. New England and Buffalo both have really good offensive lines. Even though the Dolphins are better when it comes to wide receiver than both of those two teams, it doesn't really matter how good your wide receivers are if the quarterback doesn't have time to throw them the ball. And even though they're going to be running a West Coast offense that's predicated on timing, precision passing, and getting the ball out fast, you're still going to be put in situations that are going to involve you pushing the football downfield. So that's one concern that I have. This offensive line still isn't all that great. The defense, as I mentioned, I'm not a big believer in Josh Boyer. He's just going to have to prove me wrong. So I have them at 8-9. Now, their schedule, I don't think is too tough. Okay, your first 3 games of the year, you are playing the New England Patriots. You're going on the road to Baltimore, Buffalo. Then you have Cincinnati on the road. And then after that, things kind of tone down a little bit for you after that Thursday night matchup against the Bengals. You go on the road to face the New York Jets, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, on the road against Detroit and Chicago. So those are all winnable games. That's a pretty easy stretch when you compare them to the rest of the schedule. And then after that, you got to face the Browns before your bye week. After that, you play Houston. So after that Bengals game, your next 5 to 6 games are pretty winnable. Okay, and you have a good chance of being able to go 4-2, maybe 5-1 through that stretch, and that could be the stretch that ends up helping Miami get into the playoffs, because after that Houston game, the schedule really heats up for them. They have to play San Francisco, the Chargers, the Bills. All 3 of those games are on the road back-to-back weeks. Then you have to play Green Bay really late into the season, late December. Then you have New England on the road. So their last couple of games of the season are all going to be on the road late in the season. So for Miami, a team that is trying to make a late season playoff push at this point, it's really hard to do that when you only have 2 home games to close out the rest of December, and you're going on the road in some really tough road environments such as Buffalo. Lambeau Field is really a tough place to win at, especially late in the year. So I think that they end up kind of coming out a little bit flat to end the season, and that's why I have them at 8-9. Now, they do have a good chance of being able to get to 11 wins this year. I strongly believe that. But for right now, I'm going to have them at 8-9.